in the Avengers, and it's easily the best opening of the series for me. The Ultron bots leave Hawkeye looking pretty harmless, but you have to hand it to him, the guy does some great falling with style. Throughout the scene, Widow mentions the hive mind, and this is also somewhat a nod to the original graphic novel, in that our heroes learned that Ultron had actually travelled into the future, and that he was using Vision's body as a conduit in the past to make sure that they had no chance of winning. Because Vision came from Ultron, it granted him the ability to possess him, and the episode somewhat does something similar with the MCU counterpart. Now it turns out that the pair have gone to the Kremlin, which Natasha refers to as home. Black Widow is of course Russian, and this infamous location is of course in Moscow. We then cut to the past and see Tony saying that he sees a suit of armour around the world whilst looking over Loki's scepter. This of course contained the Mind Stone, and it allowed Tony to create what he believed was a peacekeeping program. Tony did a full U-turn on his original ideology, as you might remember that he initially said he'd be out of the job with peace. However, this changed over the series, and upon leaving the cave, the first thing he did was hold up a peace sign. In the Senate he held up too, and upon burying the hatchet with Captain America, he said he just wanted peace. The idea to create peace in our time made him build Ultron, which was of course his greatest failure. I think it says a lot about humanity that Ultron spent 30 seconds on the internet and just thought, you know what, these guys gotta go. Now in the intro, we get several shots of Age of Ultron, including the one in which they stood around Vision's cradle unit deciding what to do with it. However, in the multiverse, Ultron was able to upload successfully, and thus he was near unstoppable. Ultron went after the new codes and completely decimated the Avengers because of his new abilities. We catch a quick cut of Cap's shield completely destroyed on the floor, and this is something that was seen in Tony's vision at the start of Age of Ultron. We also catch similar iconography to this vision, including a slumped over Hulk and Mjolnir also on the ground. Now I believe that this is located at the Nexus point, which we learned in that film was the central hub in which all information on the internet flowed through. This included the nuclear codes, which Ultron gets his hands on. General Ross looks over the entire destruction of the planet, and Nat and Clint only manage to survive because they're in a Quinjet when it happens. Now I've seen a couple of people asking why it's got a similar voice to James Spader and not Paul Bettany. Well, this is because that voice very much came from Jarvis, but as Ultron's the dominating personality here, this version ends up sticking with the original sound in the end. After bringing peace to the world, we watch as Thanos arrives on Earth in order to collect the Mind Stone. His entrance is very similar to how he appeared on Titan in Infinity War, but he doesn't really get the same welcome, and instead he's immediately cut in two, which was quite funny. In the wide shot we can see that Ultron's now made his home at Avengers Tower, and in Age of Ultron we saw as a Quinjet runway had been put in place to allow easier access for the Avengers. Vision destroys the gauntlet, and using what I believe are nanomachines, he makes himself into a living one. This could be a nod to the comics, as in that Tony made a suit capable of holding the stones, but it could also be a reach. Now because of his newfound gifts, he's able to alter reality and create as many Ultron sentries as he wants. It's at this point that he manifests a red cape, and though he had one as the Vision, this could be a nod to the scene in which Viz mimicked Thor and created one for himself. From this point onwards, he travels across the galaxy, independent-staying everything, and his first stop is Asgard. There's a shot in here that I think could be a reference to Alien Covenant, namely the Ozymandias scene in which David arrives on the Engineer's home planet and completely destroys it. Next he travels to the Sovereign, which is where we see the events from the opening of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Originally that was quite a fun scene packed with Baby Groot dancing, but here it's absolutely devastating. We watch as he travels to Sakaar and see the midst of a gladiator battle and get not only an appearance by Korg but also the Grandmaster. Now the Grandmaster's smile has been completely wiped off his face, and he dies in a manner that looks very similar to Laura's death at the beginning of Man of Steel. Yes, I know it's DC and not Marvel, I'm just saying. Now Ego gets his shut down as the planet is annihilated and the Xandarians are decimated. Captain Marvel arrives and calls him Skynet, which is of course a nod to the AI from Terminator. She says she doesn't think that film needs a sequel, and this is because she had left Earth when Terminator 2 was made, so she wouldn't know it existed. Maybe she was right though, yeah, because some of those Terminator sequels, not very good. Now Carol flies him into the planet's core, and though she almost destroys him, Ultron bests her with the combined might of the Infinity Stones. Destroying her completely ravages the galaxy, and it is possible that this explosion happens because Carol herself has powers which come from an Infinity Stone. The combined might of this destroys life as we know it, except for on Earth weirdly, but rather than finding joy in completing his task, much like Thanos, there is some sadness to it. The work is done, but it has robbed him of his purpose, and because of the silence in the universe, he's able to attain another level of consciousness, which allows him to witness the Watcher. This alerts him to the fact that there are universes, and it just continues his path of genocide. Now, the Watcher has been a character that's appeared in all of the episodes so far, and throughout our videos we theorized that he was going to be the one that pulled all of the heroes together for the finale. Throughout the series, you might have noticed that he's been getting closer and closer and closer every single time. First, he started off as just a silhouette amongst the stars, but as the episodes have gone on, we've started to be able to see the actual details in his face. Because he was close up and personal in episode 5, and then took a big step back for 6 before going even further back for 7, we did theorize that the leaks were true and that the order of 5 and 7 had been switched. If we look at them in the leaked order, I think it does line up, and it is possible that the creative team swapped the episodes, so we got the tease of Ultron last week. Now for me, the way they've done it works a lot better than what they had in the leaks, and though we'll probably never know for definite if that's what happened, I do think that the leaked episode lineup was indeed true. And that's because I'm never ever gonna admit I'm wrong. I'm never admitting it. Never! Now we join up with Widow and Hawkeye once more, and they travel into the file storage center of the Kremlin. Hawkeye asks if Nat has seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, and this shot is very similar to the one at the end of that movie. I wish they had have said, "Do you get the feeling we're being watched?" But alas, they get down to the busy work and attempt to go through the files one by one. Within them, Widow finds Red Guardian's shield, and she ends up taking it. The Watcher also gets a bit bored and frustrated, like when you watch a friend play a video game and he starts shouting out that the key lies with Arnim Zola, who has of course appeared in the MCU at several points. In The Winter Soldier, we learn that he became an AI after uploading his brain to data banks below Camp Lehigh. He's the only thing that can really combat Ultron, and we learn that there's a copy of him at a Hydra base in Siberia. Now because of this, it is possible that he still exists in the MCU, and dun dun dun, I'm gonna say Zola is still alive. Now I would absolutely love to see him back in the Marvel Universe, especially if they gave him his robot body from the comics, and this does sort of highlight that there is a way to bring him back. Now he does get somewhat of a robot body later on in the episode, but hopefully this isn't the last time that we've seen him, and yeah, just bring the guy back. Now the Watcher weighs up whether to intervene, as this would of course have disastrous consequences. At the end of the episode he does, and it is possible that this just causes more breaks in the multiverse, which could lead into season 2. Now when Clint gives up, he says the Death Star plans are not in the main computer, and this line is pulled verbatim from the opening of A New Hope when a stormtrooper said it to Darth Vader. Clint has given up hope, but the location to Zola is found by Nat, and they head out to the base. This base in Siberia was also the location that we saw at the start of Civil War, and it's where the Winter Soldier program operated out of. Unfortunately at this point, Ultron breaks through the multiversal barrier, and he states that destroying this is his purpose, which may be a nod to Agent Smith, who said the phrase repeatedly in the Matrix trilogy. In the hub they find the Winter Soldier tanks that were used to house the other agents, and as we saw in that film, Zemo killed them all. They activate Zola, who states their names upon greeting them, and this is similar to what he did in The Winter Soldier. You might also notice that the instructions to activate him are in Russian, whereas in America they were in English. He goes to rattle the speech off that he gave in that movie, but Nat shuts it down after saying that she's already met a copy of him. Hawkeye threatens to Wicked Witch of the West him and pour water all over his computer, and thus he agrees to their demands. They call in the cavalry and order a pizza from Ultron, which alerts them to their presence. It only takes a couple of minutes for them to deliver it, and I tell you what, Peter Parker, he's not going to be happy about that. Now Hawkeye uses a USB type arrow, and the character also had something similar in the Avengers when he launched his attack on the helicarrier. This idea of uploading a virus to Ultron actually pulls directly from the comics, as in Age of, Wolverine travelled into the past and told Hank to put one in place so that should the day come when Ultron goes wild, that they'd have a way to stop him. Zola says Ultron isn't the first genocidal maniac he's had to deal with, and this is of course not only a nod to Hitler but also the Red Skull. They destroy the databanks and fire an arrow into his sentry, which allows Zola to infect it. They then travel into a similar rocket area to what Tony, Cap and Bucky fought in during Civil War, and it leads to a great action scene in which they go head to head with the horde of Ultron bots intent on their destruction. In a reverse of Avengers Endgame, Clint is the one who ends up falling instead of Widow, and the pair holding onto each other's arms I think is definitely put in place to mirror the scene in which Nat dies. In a reverse of it, Clint is the one who sacrifices himself, and we learn that because Ultron has travelled into the multiverse, that Zola is unable to disable him. On the outside of reality, he and the Watcher go head to head across the landscape of the multiverse, which does look similar to the area that we saw in the Hyundai ad that I'll talk about later on. Uatu manifests his own armour and the two battle it out, which not only shows how powerful the latter is, but also how powerful that Ultron now is. Because of the Infinity Stones, he's able to destroy any reality at will, and we watch as they travel from universe to universe. You might notice that the guy from last week who had pineapples on his shirt is back, and it seems like his destiny is to be at the forefront of every alien invasion. On a Times Square billboard, we can actually catch Steve in the background being sworn in as the president, and this is one of the best Easter eggs I think has been in the show so far. As Ultron punches him, reality warps around them, and we watch as the onlookers transform into Wakandans before they become people from the Middle Ages and also Skrulls. It really sets up Infinite Ultron as the most dangerous threat in the entire multiverse, and it's difficult to think if we've encountered someone worse than this. Cut to the Watcher going to Strange Supreme's home, in which he too destroyed reality. We see him in his beast form, but he does turn back into a human in order to talk to Uatu. He's as arrogant as ever, and he rubs it in the Watcher's face that he's gonna have to break his oath. Similar to the Watcher, Strange took an oath, namely the Hippocratic one, in which he said he'd never take a life. However, this version ended up breaking that, and they do share some common ground, and, you know, Uatu do what Uatu do. So bad. Sorry, I was just interjecting there. I was going to do a you do what to break your oath, but let's be honest, both those puns are as bad as each other. Now, he asks for help, yeah? And we close out in a similar manner to what we did in the Strange Supreme episode, with us seeing his gem-like reality. Now, as for next time, there has been a lot of the finale that's been shown in the trailers. Weirdly, there's actually more out on that episode than there was in advance for this one, and we will of course be getting a massive team up with all of the heroes from across the series. Marvel are so smart in the way that they do team ups, and they've kind of done What If in the exact same way that they did the Avengers. They seemingly did standalone stories that gave us all of the origins of the characters, but we now know that they're going to team up, and it just allows us to hit the ground running next week. Now, so far in the sneak peeks and first looks, we've seen several meetings, including Captain Carter coming face to face with Strange Supreme. There was also him meeting with Thor, and the latter talked about zombies, which of course ties in with episode 5. There's been 2 big team up shots shown in the trailers, and this included Black Widow, Captain Carter, Thanora, and Party Thor. The pan is pretty quick on it in the trailers, but we can also catch T'Challa standing there as well. Also, did you catch that Captain Carter has an updated uniform? The Union Jack on her chest appears silver, much in the same way that Cap's star does too. Don't it make you bloody proud to be British? Now, the other team-up shot had Killmonger in his Black Panther costume, Thanora again, this time a better view of T'Challa, and lastly Party Thor. So yeah, the trailers spoiled it all before I even had a chance to. You might also remember that there was a Hyundai ad in which several of the characters from the series fought against Ultron bots, and this is probably going to be similar to what we see in the final episode, with the amazing new Hyundai hopefully making an appearance. Available now, go buy one. Now, in that ad, the Watcher also used his powers, and I have a theory that his interfering to stop this big threat actually causes the multiverse to split even more, and that this sets up season 2. There was also a clip in the first trailer in which Party Thor said slow down, as there's people in the room that don't understand what you're saying. Though he said it wasn't him, and he got the gist of it, he was clearly talking about himself because, yeah, the guy's a bit dim. No offense if he's watching this, which he probably is, he's a big fan. Now, not only does this kind of show the over-the-top arrogance and vanity that this version of Thor has, but it also lets us know that something quite complicated is being explained to a room full of people. My guess is that this is either the Watcher or Strange Supreme going over the multiverse to the heroes that have been pulled across. They'll probably be explaining this major new threat, and it's all just going over Thor's head. Now, this will probably be early on in the episode, I imagine, and it'll help to get the heroes up to speed before they go into a big fight. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and because they're multiversal versions, there might even be a couple of deaths. There was also a shot in which Pepper and a young Shuri were fighting in what I believe is Wakanda, as well as one of Ego holding Quill up in the air to drain his powers. This makes me think that we might also get some parts early on in the episode in which we learn about what happened in the cliffhangers in the series. T'Challa fighting across the multiverse and not being there to stop Ego could lead to that reality being destroyed, but yeah, we're just gonna have to see. Now for the next part of the video, I'm going to be giving a brief review and then going into the Venom Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene details that I've been told. I will give you a heads up before then though, in case you want to dive out the video without having anything ruined. Now as for my thoughts on the episode, I know this was another pretty depressing one, but if you've been keeping up with our reviews then you'll know Dem's our favourite. For me, this is one of the best episodes in the entire series, if not the best, and I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the Strange Supreme one and Zombies alongside this to decide which is my favourite. It also answers a big criticism that people have with the show, which is that everything feels disjointed. As I mentioned, Marvel are just sticking to the strategy of letting us get to know the characters before they bring them all together, and it's nice that we now know that this is where they're taking things. It looks like they're doing the same thing with either the Dark Avengers or Thunderbolts, and it just works really well in my opinion. The finale will be way better because we've had this setup, and I actually think that the series will work really well on